from a vantage point perspective, I've done my best to sort of show my little kitchen. I don't have the best setup in the kitchen I'm in, so I'm trying to show as much as possible. If anyone can't see anything, type in, Corinne will give me the heads up, say, hey, Meryl, show me this. But I'm going to try to show you as much as possible. I'm not going to show you every step of each recipe all the way through. I've done a few things in advance. That's because we don't have too much time together. I'm just giving you some ideas. These are things I hope that you take back home and do with your family. And also you may have your own things that you like, things you want to add in yourself. So you're going to do it a little bit differently at home. That's totally okay. I'm also going to be making some notes throughout of times when you may want a little more parental supervision, things that kids might be able to do on their own, etc. Looks like we have a pretty good range of ages here. So it's good to see everybody here today. And I can't, let's see, Corinne, you might need to read the chat back to me because I don't have it on the setting where I can read.
Sure. Yeah, so for ages, it looks like we have a few kids in between ages 5 through 9. And then for our flavors, we have chocolate popsicles from Alex. We have rainbow sherbet, and we have cherry lemon.
Oh, I love that.
It's strawberry.
Yeah. Any flavor you like, you can do. So we're going to do popsicles towards the end, just to sort of show you how to do that. We're going to start today with something super cool that I can't wait to show you, which is breakfast tortilla wraps. Now, this is something where you're going to need a parent if you are a little bit younger, because the waffle iron does get really hot. I've already had my waffle iron heating here. As long as you have a parent nearby, feel free to get started on this recipe. You're going to need some tortillas. I have whole wheat ones, but you can get all different kinds of flavors. Now, I'm cheating. I actually cut this to fit in my waffle iron. It might be a little bit different for you, but we're going to put that right down in our waffle iron, and I've made some scrambled eggs. Now, you could make this into not a breakfast thing. I bet you someone could make a really good pizza version of this, but I just like this because it's a little bit of a different way to use your waffle iron. You know what? We're going to start with cheese. And now, why do we think we're going to start with cheese? Does anybody have an idea why I started with the cheese? Feel free to unmute. So the reason I'm going to start with the cheese is so that everything kind of sticks together. So just a little bit of cheese. That's probably about 2 tablespoons worth of cheese, and you can use any flavor of cheese that you like. Now, I really like a little bit of egg, so we're going to add some egg. And I have a little bit of veggie sausage. You could use ham, bacon. Veggie sausage is fun because it tastes really good. And there's no meat in there, so I don't have to go crazy there. And I've got some chopped peppers. If you don't like peppers, you could use something else, but I like just a little bit. And then on top of that, we're going to add a little bit more cheese. Now, the most important thing when you're making this is to make sure that you do not overfill this. If you've ever made waffles before and put too much filling in, has anyone ever had a waffle disaster where it splooches out the sides? Not good. So we want to make sure that we don't fill it too full. So we're going to make sure that that's folded like that. Can everyone kind of see that? And then I'm going to close this, and this is going to be about 3 or 4 minutes. Now, I already sprayed this with some cooking spray. You just want to make sure that you have a little something on there so it doesn't stick too much. A little bit about me while that cooks. I've loved to cook since I was a little kid. Some of my earliest memories are playing around and putting every spice in the spice cabinet on the perfect tomatoes that my parents grew in our backyard. I probably ruined those tomatoes by putting so many things on them, but my dad ate it anyways because he knew that I was experimenting. So it's always okay to experiment in the kitchen. It's always okay to try things, make mistakes. What I hope is that everybody tries to cook. A lot of people say, oh, I'm not a good cook. I don't cook because I'm not a good cook. And I say, well, do you cook a lot? And they say, no, I don't cook a lot. And I say, well, then that's the problem. You've got to do it to get good at it. Anything that anybody does that they're good at, I want to believe that they do it a lot. So it's practice. Practice may not make perfect. Practice doesn't have to make perfect, but practice definitely will make better every time you do it. And especially with cooking, that's definitely true. So I'm just going to move my things away here. So don't have a very big kitchen, so I've had to get creative with where I put things. All right. So I'm gonna check on my, ooh, we're looking good. I'm gonna keep going. Does anybody have any good ideas for other things they might like to make in this waffle iron sandwich method? I think the pizza idea is a good one. Do you want to have any other good ideas? No? Okay. So everyone's probably chatting it and I can't see it. Maybe peanut butter, banana, and honey would be awesome. Or Nutella. I love Nutella. Delicious. If you want something sweet. Again, no measurements here, but I will kind of give some pointers when I send the recipe out in email, just so you have a sense for about how much of everything you should have on hand. That also depend on how many people you have in your house, and how many of these you want to make and how hungry you are. Sometimes I'm super hungry and I could eat a bunch of these. Sometimes maybe not so much. So let's see, we're almost there. A little bit longer. So while this is going, I'm going to start talking about the other thing that we're going to do. So I don't know if anybody here likes tater tot. Ooh, PB&J. I like the idea of a warm PB&J. I think that sounds so good. Maybe with some really thin apple slices in there would be amazing. So I baked some potatoes earlier. This is a recipe that uses 2 cups of mashed potatoes. You can do them any way you want. You could even use instant ones for this recipe. But I'm going to mash them in kind of a fun way. This is one of my fun kitchen tools that I use all the time. It's called a potato ricer. See that right there? So this piece comes out, and there's a little piece inside that has little holes in it. And that fits inside. Oh, I'm starting to hear some sizzling. That means that our sandwich might be ready. So before I go on with this, I'm actually going to take a break and see what's going on with the waffle maker. Bring that into view. So cooking is all about using all your senses. You use your nose to smell. So I just have to smell that things are getting cooked. I'm using my ears because I am listening for sizzling. That lets me know that some of the fat and the cheese is coming out, and you can see that it's starting to get really nice and brown. I'm going to carefully use my sense of touch. Now this is hot, but I'm just going to give it a tap lightly. Tap, tap. That just lets me know how hard the tortilla is. You want to be careful of hot things, but you can just touch it lightly. I think it needs about 1 more minute. So I'm using my eyes to see. So you use all your senses, and obviously you use taste. That's funny, that's the last thing we mentioned there. But you're using all your senses when you cook. So it's a whole body experience when you cook. Let's let that go. While we let that finish, let's do the potato. So this is so fun. Now, if you don't have whole potatoes at home and all you have is the instant mashed ones, go ahead and use those. It will work just fine. So I'm going to maybe break it in half. I don't know if the whole thing will go in here. Into the crusher it goes. All right. Now, you might need an adult's help if you do have one of these at home because they can be kind of tough. But, ooh, yeah, look at that. Look at it come out. Awesome. Let's use a spatula to scrape it off there. Fun. Now, why does something like this exist? The potato ricer exists because this is a gentle way to turn all the potato into little pieces. You can see right there how it comes. It's like those things you get in the Play-Doh kits. I have potato on my nose. I have potato on my nose. Okay. It's okay, we just keep going. So we got that off. Now, this is probably a little bit more than I need for the recipe, so I'm going to put my potato masher aside. I'm just going to take out a little bit so I don't have too much. This is a recipe that you should measure, but you don't have to be too careful. If you have a little bit extra potato or broccoli, that is okay. Now, I don't know if anyone can hear, but I can definitely hear that sizzle. Look at that inside. You can see the hot cheese. Now, I would never normally say, do not pick up your waffle iron at home. That's just for video purposes only. How long should potatoes be boiled for? Depends on your potato. Now for this, I like to use russets. Russets are starchy. I would not use like a red potato because they're too like almost waxy or oily. I say if you're boiling potatoes, I would cut, if they're normal russet size like this, you could cut them into quarters and it'll probably be about 20 minutes. You'll know they're done when you put a fork in them and they break apart. You can fish one out carefully, put it on a plate, and if it breaks apart, you know it's done. The other way I really like to do potatoes, if I'm doing a lot of them, is I actually do them in my pressure cooker, which is definitely an adults only thing, but for parents, slide into my DMs on that one. It's really super fast, a great way to do 5 pounds of potatoes into mashed potatoes real quick. Okay, so now safety first. We're going to use tongs to take this out.
Give me more chair.
What was that, Corinne? I didn't hear what you said.
Sorry, that was me. I'm sorry. I was talking to my daughter. Oops.
Oh, no, worry about it. Okay, so look at that. Now you could maybe let this go even a little longer, but this is awesome because once this cools a little bit, this is a good to-go thing. So if you have to run out to do something, you can put this in a piece of paper towel and go. So look at that yummy, cheesy goodness there. That smells so delicious. This is a great way to use up tortillas. This probably would work with a corn tortilla. You might just be a little bit more careful. And again, you could also use some lunch meats in here, kind of make it different. This is a great flexible recipe that you can use anything you have in your house. It looks really delicious. Okay, I'm gonna set that aside. Okay, we're gonna take a second, turn off our waffle iron here. Oops. And we're just gonna set that aside. Okay, back to the potatoes. So I always say when you're learning to cook that you want to try to learn to do one thing at a time. Once you get really good, then you can start to multitask and do different things. When you're learning to cook, it's important to focus. You should never start something on the stove, walk away. You should always be aware of what you're doing when you're in the kitchen. That way, you're in total control and you're keeping everything safe. So I've got my mashed potatoes, got about 2 cups of that. I've got about ½ a cup of grated Parmesan. I don't really like the stuff that comes in that green canister. You know what I'm talking about. I kind of like to grate it myself. The last video I did a recipe where I said don't use that because it has stuff in which stops it from clumping. This doesn't matter if all you have is the stuff in the tub. Go ahead, use it. I happen to grate it just because I like it. I'm going to add that into my potato. Now, you can add this when it's warm, but I think it's a little better to wait till stuff cools because we are going to be shaping this with our hands. So you just want to maybe let it cool a little bit. I'm also going to add about 2 tablespoons of any cheese you like. I'm going to use the same Monterey Jack I had. And I'm going to add a pinch of salt. I forgot to do this last time I made them. And I said, what's wrong? I said, oh, they're not very salty. Okay, and that looks good. You can always add a little salt on afterwards. So you want to do a medium amount of salt when you do these. Now, this is a fun thing to do. I love broccoli as long as it's cooked well. If you overcook broccoli, it doesn't taste very good, but if you have good fresh broccoli, it's nice. I took about 1 head of, like a 1 floret head of broccoli. This is probably about 1 heaping cup worth. I washed it. I cut it up. I actually put it in my food processor to get this. They actually sell frozen riced broccoli in the freezer aisle, which is a great time saver. So you could definitely use that instead. But I just went ahead and blitzed that up in my food processor and put this in the microwave for about 2 minutes with some saran wrap on top. Kids, definitely something to be careful about whenever you're heating something in the microwave and you have a lid on it. You want to be careful of steam. Steam is super hot and you can burn your hands. You always want to wait a second or just carefully have a towel or something when you lift it off because steam can come out and burn you if you take that out of the microwave too soon. You just want to steam it till it gets bright green and then we're going to dry it off. So this is another fun task for slightly younger hands as long as they're somewhat coordinated. Put that in our bowl. All right. So I've got this on my paper towel and I'm going to roll it up, maybe tuck the edges in a little bit just so it doesn't come out. And we are going to squeeze. You don't want to wring it because then it's going to come flying out and then you're not going to have any dinner. Squeeze, squeeze. Yeah. You can feel the water coming out. So use your sense of touch. Okay, and we're doing this because if there's too much water in the broccoli, it's going to make our broccoli tots all soggy and not yummy and crispy. Now, while I'm about to mix this, I'm also going to turn on my toaster oven. You can do this in the regular oven. I just thought it would be easier for you to see a little bit of this. I'll move that into view a little bit so you can have an eye on that. And we'll turn it on. 375. Okay. So we have our potatoes, we have our cheese, we have our broccoli. Now, if you have people in your home who have a problem with green things, first of all, those poor green things, they deserve love too. You ought to give them a shot. But if you have someone in your house who just won't eat a green thing, then guess what? Cauliflower, not green. Guess what? Same color as the potato. Go ahead, parents. You know what I'm talking about. If you do not like broccoli or cauliflower, you could do a similar amount of spinach, cooked the same way, chopped up small, squeezed out. You could just do potato as well. That's fine, but that's a little boring to me. I want to have some other things in it. Now, I like a little garlic. Maybe you do too. This is dry garlic. I like dry garlic in a recipe like this because this is some cool science. This is dehydrated, which means that they took the water out of it. So when you use dry onion or garlic powder in your recipe, that will help absorb water. So any recipe where you think that things being too wet might be an issue, that is a thing where you might want to think about using some dried spices. We have people who love the color green. And you know what? If you want to get super crazy, you could even take, honestly, I mean, I don't know why you would do this because I think this looks good on its own, but you could add some food coloring in with the potato and you could make rainbow tots. Very cool. So my hands are clean. I was washing them a little while ago. So I'm going to shape these into little tots. You could make them into funny shapes if you want. Just don't make sure they're not too big. They should be, I don't know, thumb-sized. If you make them too big, then they're not going to get cooked all the way through. So I'm just going to do a couple to show you, and I'll do the rest of them later. So we've got a few more things to do today. But this is a great thing for little hands to work on. Feels good too. It's like Play-Doh you can eat. So delicious. It smells really good too. I smell the cheese and the garlic. All right. And sometimes you might find this not coming together too much. I might actually need to add a little bit more potato to this mixture. That's okay. So what I said about the recipe being a little bit flexible. If you find it's really not coming together, you could add a little bit more potato. If you find for some reason it's super wet, maybe you boiled your potatoes and they absorbed a lot of water. Maybe the broccoli wasn't squeezed out quite well enough. You could add a little sprinkle of breadcrumbs in there just until it comes together. This is a very forgiving recipe. So, okay, we've got, let's get our, let's see. Okay, always being careful with hot things that I use a towel. I have a little baking spray here. I'm going to spray down. We're doing this so that they don't stick. And we're just going to do our sample tots like that here. Oh my goodness, it's going to be so good. Okay, now carefully, since this was in there already, you make that mistake once and you do not make it again. Ouch. Always want to be careful with burns in the kitchen. They hurt so much when you're not careful. Okay, let's make sure this one's not touching. Okay. There we go, into the oven. Let's see if we can see that. So you can see that they're going. We'll check on those in about 10 minutes or so. And now we're going to do chicken and apple balls. Now, parents, this one does include raw meat. So let's talk a little bit about food safety. Before we touch raw meat, we're going to wash our hands. We're not going to do the full 20 seconds since I'm just rinsing them. We want to make sure all our surfaces are clean, and we want to make sure that after we're done working with raw meat, anything that we use to stir it, any cutting boards, any surfaces are cleaned with a sanitizer, because raw meat does have some germs on it, and we want to make sure we don't spread those all around the kitchen. We want to be really careful about any raw meat touching things which aren't going to be cooked too. So I never would prepare raw meat next to my salad. I would move to another part of the kitchen, use a different cutting board, and then I would wash that cutting board, wash my hands, wash my knife, wash that and stop. So it's sort of all stop when you do raw meat. I usually like to wait till either the end or the beginning to deal with my raw meat. So I've already taken 2 chicken breasts and I put them in my food processor and I gave them about 20 pulses. I chopped them into chunks first and I made my own ground chicken. You can buy ground chicken for this recipe. I don't really like the texture. You can do it yourself. It's kind of fun and it makes a slightly better texture, but you go ahead and use pre-done ground chicken if you have to. I'm going to grab that out of my fridge. I have it in there so it stays cold. Okay. And I've got my bowl. Now, put that in there. And I'm actually just going to set that aside for a second. It's a lot of sizzling going on in here. I can hear it. I think my heat may be a little too hot. I'm going to turn it down. Okay, great. So these are chicken and apple balls. These are like really sweet nuggets. They're really fun to make on your own. I've never seen chicken and apple balls that you could buy from the supermarkets. I think this is kind of fun. You're supposed to grate the apple, but I can't find my grater, so I'm going to chop them really fine. Grab my knife. So let's talk about knife safety a little bit. If you're a little bit older, if you're in that 8 or 9 category with parental supervision, with mom and dad's okay, you should be able to learn how to start using a knife. So what's important about knives? Number 1, why do people cut themselves? They cut themselves because they use dull knives. If you have a dull knife, you're hacking away, you're trying too hard. Guess what? You're going to slip and you're going to cut yourself. So you should make sure that mom and dad have a sharp knife in the house that fits in your hand, that feels good to use. Number 2, knives are not toys. It is a privilege to use them. So no goofing around with your brothers or your sisters with knives in the kitchen. This is my tool. I love it. I treat it with respect. I make sure it's sharp. I put it away when I'm done. So you should be talking with mom and dad to make sure that if you love cooking, that you have a knife which is yours, that you take care of, and that you maybe have mom and dad help you sharpen. If you're a little younger, there are plenty of knives that are a little bit better for smaller hands, made of nylon, made of plastic, which are great for practicing. Like I said, everyone needs to practice to get better. So there's many different knives for many different skill and age levels, but the most important thing is to always be safe. So what are the safety tips? Number 1, make sure your cutting board is stable. What does that mean? It means it's not sliding around on the counter. That's another reason people cut themselves, is you go to cut something and the cutting board slides and your knife slips and you cut yourself, and it's such a bummer. So you put a wet piece of paper towel or a little bit of paper towel down. My knife is sharp. I sharpened it this morning to make sure that it would cut through food easily and I don't have to work and then slip when I cut. And I wish I could get down a little bit lower here. But if anyone wants a knife skills class, we'll have to go in a one-on-one and I'll change my setup a little bit. We're just gonna go here. I'm gonna tuck my finger so I don't have my fingers or my thumb sticking out. Everything is tucked in. And I'm looking when I'm doing it. I'm going slow because I don't wanna cut myself if I'm not paying attention and I'm doing video here. So I'm happy to give knife skills classes, so that's definitely something I would like a parent around for. Better for the older set. So, that's that. So, stabilize your cutting board. Have a sharp knife that actually fits in your hands. Another way that people hurt themselves is they don't cut on a flat surface. They take something that is rolling around and they try to cut it, and guess what? It rolls and it slips. I've cut this apple into little pieces and I'm cutting it on a flat surface. I'm always finding the way that it's most stable so it's not moving around. That might mean making a little cut in your food. But you always want to think and look and say, is this a safe way to cut? Are my fingers in the way? And it only takes making a mistake and doing it once to hopefully never make that mistake again. I hope you never make that mistake. But that doesn't mean we should be afraid. This is a skill. This is a tool. If you are old enough to use a pen and pencil and write your name neatly, then you can start to practice with any kind of a knife that your parents find is appropriate for you and your age. Okay, so that is all chopped up into little chunks, and I have done my speech on knife safety. Probably really important to say that if you get it into your head, even if you are a little older, not a great idea to do a ton of stuff with knives when your parents are not around in the kitchen. If you hurt yourself, that's going to be really dangerous. Always make sure that your parent is around when you're doing that. Okay, we're going to move our cutting board out of the way. It feels really good when you get good at using your knife and you can make lots of little shapes. It's fun to practice. So I've got my 2 cups or two chicken breasts worth of chicken. I'm going to add salt. I'm going to say generous pinch. This is probably about a teaspoon. And we go, maybe a little pinch more. I'm going to add my 1 chopped apple. Oh yeah, I'm using my friend's kitchen right now, and so this is my little friend Max's cereal bowl that I'm using. I ran out of the cool ones that you can see. All right, breadcrumbs. We're gonna do about a 1/4 cup. These are gluten-free. You don't have to use gluten-free ones, but I just kind of like them. You could use panko, you could use seasoned ones, totally okay. And we're gonna start that with there, and if you find that you need more, you can definitely add more. We're also going to maybe add a little bit more of our garlic powder. You could use some onion powder too. I would start with about 1/2 teaspoon. If you're curious as to what it tastes like, you can always mix it up and do a little sample ball in a pan, cook it, and then see how that tastes. So I'm going to use my mixing bowl here. Oops. I'm not used to doing this for a video. I'm usually by myself in the kitchen. So I'm a personal chef, which means that I started my own business and I work in people's houses and I cook for them whatever they want. We talk together each week. Maybe they have special meals they need to have. Maybe they want to be surprised. I've been doing it on my own for as my own business for a couple of years, but I've been doing it on the side for over 12 years at this point, which seems like a super long time. When I was a little girl, I always thought being a cook would be really cool, but I never imagined that I would start my own business. So you never know where life is going to take you. But I always loved to cook, and I always kept cooking. I always kept learning. I went to college. I still wasn't working in food full time, and I started working for a food magazine, and that was very cool. And that made me realize there's so much more I could do with cooking. And after a while, when I started my own business, I said, you know, this is the best thing ever. I love this. So now, if you have some kitchen gloves at home, you could use them for this if you really don't want to get your hands in raw chicken. But as long as you wash your hands really thoroughly, I'm gonna wash my hands for about a minute after I do this. You should be fine to touch it with your hands. So I'm actually going to use an additional 1/4 cup or so of breadcrumbs and just put them on a plate. You know, and you shouldn't be afraid, you know, if your meat is fresh and good, you shouldn't be afraid to touch it. Maybe it's a little slimy. You know what? That's okay. That's my timer. Check on our potato tots. They look like they need a little more time. And add about a tablespoon of oil to our pan here. And my hand is now dirty. I have a conundrum. What do? I need to turn this on. I don't get a chicken hand on here. I'm going to get a piece of paper towel. Oh. And I'm going to just turn that on. Okay, paper towel goes away. I'm not touching other stuff in my kitchen when I'm touching the meat. Now, there's your little chicken and apple ball, a little bit of coating on the outside so it's crispy. This is the part you definitely want a little adult help for if you're using the hot stove here. But these are delicious. I guarantee you everybody in your family who eats meat is going to love these. They're really tasty, and they can have any flavor you want in them. So if you have other I didn't add any other spices in here, but if you wanted to, you could add thyme, rosemary, sage. Sometimes you have a jar in your cabinet called poultry mix, which has a mix of those flavors. That's really good. You could add pepper. If you like spicy, you want to have a challenge, you can do the spiciest thing. You can add lots of spicy stuff. You could do that and surprise mom or dad. I think that's kind of mean, but I'm saying you could do it. So we'll do about 4. Okay, pan's heating. I'm gonna wash my hands. I'm gonna go off camera. Guess what? The camera is in the sink. It's a big sink. And I had no other place to put it. It's not gonna, none of the electrical parts are near the sink, so we're not in any danger here, but I have to step off camera to make sure my hands are clean. We're really washing them. We're giving them the full 20-second plus wash here and making sure you get under your fingernails, all of that. Good hand washing with lots of soap and hot water. Okay.
So we
Then
had
you
a question come in that you might have not seen while you were off camera.
I was not. If you have typed a question, it is very likely I have not seen it because I've been focused on trying not to blow up the kitchen here.
So we had someone ask if you could use different fruit, not just apple.
Yeah, that's a great idea. What kind of fruit were we thinking?
I feel like orange chicken. Those
Yeah,
go
so what
together.
you could do then is you could, now the apple kind of gives a moistness to this, which I like, so I don't want to keep the apple in, but what you could do is you could zest an orange and then just make sure you've washed your orange really well, because you don't want you want to make sure you really give it a good scrub so you're not getting any like wax or something that's from the orange. But that would be, orange added to this would be very delicious. You could even take it one step further and you could add maybe a teaspoon of sesame oil and you could put sesame seeds on the outside. You could make it kind of a Asian inspired orange chicken situation. That sounds like an amazing idea. And you know, I'm gonna get a tong so I don't have to touch these again and wash my hands again. So how do we know a pan is ready? Mom and dad says it's ready if you're young and you can't reach the pan. You never want to reach up in for a pan because you're going to flip it and hurt yourself. You notice that the pan, you see the oil, because you probably, it's hard to get the lighting right, but what I'm seeing in my pan is that the oil shimmers a little bit. If you look carefully and you're paying attention, you see that it has a little shimmer and a shine to it. That means that it's hot enough. Now, the other thing you want to be careful of is you don't want to use too much oil. If you use a lot of oil and then you heat it up hot, that could cause a fire. So you want to be careful and just use a tablespoon to start. You can add more as you go along. So I'm going to use my tongs. Potato tots are taking a little longer than 10 minutes. I don't know if I put the heat lower, but that's okay. We're just going to take a look. I think they need a few more minutes. I like them to be really nice and golden brown. Okay. So let's talk about food safety and temperature with chicken. Everyone always says, Meryl, how do you know that chicken is cooked? I said, well, get a thermometer, a digital thermometer, especially if you're a little bit older and you love to do kitchen science experiments. It's going to make you a way better cook, because guess what? Chicken is cooked when it's 165 degrees in the middle, whether or not, I usually to get it up to about 170, especially if it's pre-ground chicken that you didn't do yourself, just to have it be that little bit hotter. But a chicken breast that you just grill, if the middle is 165 degrees and that is safe to eat. Guess what? If you don't take the temperature, you can't really know for sure unless you cut it, you look at it, does it look cooked? You don't know. So I think a good digital thermometer is something that every kid who likes to cook and every adult who likes to cook should have in their kitchen. And not one of those meat thermometers that just is that thing that's in the back of your drawer. You want like a digital one. They're not expensive and they last a long time. And if you like to bake, if you like to make pudding and custard, if you want to learn to be a good cook, I always take temperatures of all my food. When I'm cooking for the people I work for, I want to make sure that it's safe each and every time that they're eating. And so before I am finished with anything, I always take that temperature to make sure that it's the safe temperature for that kind of food. Different kinds of food get cooked to different temperatures to make sure that they're cooked. If you don't cook stuff to the right temperature, then you can get really sick and have a really bad stomachache or worse. Food poisoning, not fun. Much easier to just test. I'm adding a little more oil now. Probably about another tablespoon just so they get nice and crispy. Now, if you want, you can put these on a sheet pan You can use some oil spray on top of them and also on the bottom of the pan, and you can bake them for about 15 to 20 minutes in the 375-degree oven with mom and dad's help. But for these are probably going to take about 10 minutes on a medium heat. And so I'm just going to quickly give them little tosses once in a while to make sure they're brown on all sides. I'm going to check on my broccoli tots, and then we're going to talk a little bit about popsicles. So I'm going to move this. Yep, we're done. Ding, fries are done. All right. Careful now. This is not supposed to be here. I had to move everything here just so you could see it. I want to always think about safety, so we're using our thing. These are a little bit less done than I would like them. I probably give them about 5 more minutes. But you can see here, they're looking good. Now, things that might happen, they might stick a little bit when you first take them out. Just be patient, careful, because it's hot. Let it sit for 5 minutes on a safe surface, and they should come right up. If they stick, you know what, no big deal. It will still taste great. But these look like they came off nice and brown on the bottom. And let's see if we get a little yummy, cheesy goodness. Oh my gosh, I want to eat those right now. They look so good. Okay. Maybe I will eat one. Let's see. A little dipping sauce here. Woo. Okay. I just ate something. Now I gotta wash my hands again. Look what I did. Okay. Whenever you eat something or you touch your face in the kitchen, guess what? Gotta stop. Gotta wash your hands. You don't want to spread your germs. Okay. Now once you get really good, you can roll them around in the pan like this, and that's super fun. Now let's talk dessert. Now I did a couple before. These take maybe 3 or 4 hours to set up in the freezer, unless you have one of those fancy pop molds. I think Zoku makes the ones that are just, I have a helper in the background. Helper, there's a pink topped plastic thing I need in there too. There's Zoku molds that you put it in, and you put them in the freezer so that the mold is already frozen, and you pour it in kind of automatically. Makes a popsicle, which I think is pretty cool. But I don't have one of those. I do have a couple other styles I'm going to show you. For those of you who do not have popsicle molds, there are other ways to do it. You can recycle. I took a Yoplait thing, and now this is definitely a mom or dad thing to carefully cut the top off. Sometimes they crack, and you use a little bit of tape or something in there. So I took some of my mixture. I took the lid off just so it's easy to pull out again. If you just pour it in, it's going to get stuck on that lid that comes in. So I cut that part off just like that. And I put foil on top like that, and then I stuck my popsicle stick in like that. Now, to release, you pour under a little bit of water. Okay. So that should come out. More water. Okay. I'm in the sink. Oh my goodness. Either that or you just wait a couple seconds. It's really in there. Let's give it a moment. Are you not ready to come out yet? Okay, fine. We'll wait. We'll try the other one. So this is another model that I have. Let's see. I like this one because you can take them out individually. So let's see, you don't have all of them. It also has a nice base for that. So that's kind of cool. I also have another one I'll show you. This is a silicone one, and I like this because it has a lid that holds everything in place and keeps funky smells out, so that's kind of great. Let's run this one under some water. Pardon me, I'm in the sink. Okay. Ooh, be strong. Now, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, where you pull too hard, and then the little handle comes out. So I'm going to be patient and wait. Sometimes we just need to be patient. I'm going to let that sit for a second and just thaw a little bit. We can look at some ones that I made in my, oh my goodness, I love this one. Ta-da! So this is my favorite kind, is creamsicle. I said, I wonder what would happen if I cut a little piece of a mandarin orange really thin and stuck it in there, and guess what? It looks super cool. Let's see. So good. So I'm going to show you how to make these real quick. I don't know if these other ones are going to come out yet. Let's see, are you ready to come out yet? Maybe by the time we're done, we can get this one out of here. It'll have thawed a little bit. Helper, will you put this back in the freezer for me? Thank you, Helper. Now, we're just gonna finish these before we go to Popsicles. These will need about 8 more minutes, it looks like. I'm just guessing, but I'm gonna turn them off for now just so I don't have something hot right here while I'm doing all this other stuff. But if, for the folks at home, you could, once you get them kind of brown on all sides, put them in the oven at this point as well and give them about another 10 minutes, let them finish cooking so you get all the nice browning. This is, again, because the apple is pretty moist, so it can take a little bit of extra cooking. Okay. Let's get our blender. Now, the first recipe, you don't need to use a blender, and the other recipe you will. I also am going to heat up my boiling water. This should be pretty close to done. And I'm going to talk a little bit about using Jell-O to make popsicles. So this is super cool because number one, there's a million flavors of Jell-O. Jell-O's awesome. Even if you don't have Jell-O in your house, you don't like all the colors and weird stuff that's in there, you can still use regular gelatin. What this does is it stops the popsicle from dripping. Gelatin makes a gel which holds all the water. Parents, if you Google popsicle gelatin experiment, there's all sorts of interesting science experiments about how gelatin affects melting rates, and it's pretty cool. It's really useful if you have little ones who are running around as well, because it's not going to drip as much everywhere, and it makes it really nice and fast and easy. So let's do the basic recipe here. I have some strawberry Jell-O. I have some apple, orange, pineapple juice. I've got my measuring cups. Just gonna push that back a little bit. Okay. So this first one, the basic recipe, is we're going to do a cup of cold juice. And we're going to do a cup of hot water. Now the reason we need hot water is the hot water is going to dissolve the gelatin. If you just add this to the cold, it won't really work. It's just going to get in clumps. So we can add that to our mixing bowl here. And we're just going to wait till this gets a little hotter. Okay. That's pretty much boiling. So if you're dealing with boiling water, please ask for help for parents. And we're going to do 1 cup of boiling water. I like to do this in the measuring cup. That way you don't have to keep transferring boiling water everywhere. All right. Get my trusty whisk. No whisk, no reward. Well, it smells really good. I love the smell of strawberry Jell-O. Oh. Woo! This is a great thing too, because this is a good snack. The gelatin has a protein. It's nice to have a little hit of protein. Tastes good. I will include in my recipe how to do this with just regular gelatin. That's all you have with the Knox Blocks packets. So then to this, you're going to add your cold liquid, and that starts to cool it down a little bit. Now we're going to stir again. So that's your basic recipe. You can do that with any liquid, any flavored Jell-O. Get creative. You could totally do cherry. You could do lemonade as the cold liquid, and then cherry Jell-O, like someone that said cherry lemon. That'd be a real easy way to do this. And then you'll just pour into your molds. So let's grab that out. Let's see if this one is ready yet. Are you ready? Ooh, almost. It says 1 more minute. Okay. Now, and pour in. Now, do you want to make a stripy popsicle? I know I do, although we don't have time today. You can. Pour in like this, all the way through. And then you can put it in your freezer, and you can let it freeze for about an hour. And then you can make a different mixture and let that cool down a little bit, and then pour that into the mold. Let that chill a little bit, and then add another mixture in. Now the only thing is, if you have the gelatin, it might set. So it's a risk that you have to take. Or you could just use a regular juice mixture and not use, and have a bottom layer that's the gelatin. I might choose the last layer for the gelatin, since that's the part that will drip. But we're not going to do stripy ones. We're just going to do them like this. And we don't want to fill them all the way. because you want to leave some room. That's another cool thing about making popsicles. When liquid freezes, it actually expands, so you want to leave a little space. What did I do with those tops? All right, so we'll put that on, and that will go into the freezer. Not now, later, because I'm going to show you one more thing. Okay, so now, let's see, we need to find that frozen banana. This is a great way to use up frozen bananas that I'm about to show you. This is my favorite, the creamsicle. And you could use any flavor of yogurt you like, but I really like to use full-fat Greek yogurt because it has a little bit less moisture in it, and that means that it's going to be smoother. You can use a liquid or a dry measure here because it's about the same for this purpose. It's not a super precise recipe. If you only have plain yogurt, you can add some vanilla flavoring. We're going to add 8 pounds of banana. We're going to add regular orange juice. We're going to add, I think, about 1 cup. Now, I've got my hot water still. I'm going to take half a cup of hot water carefully. And I've got some orange Jell-O here. And I'm going to add that in. So you say, why did you use a full cup before and a half cup now? Well, I just need enough hot water to dissolve. And you can sometimes get away with a little bit less because I have more liquid in this. That's things like orange juice and yogurt. So we're just going to want to make sure that we stir this extra carefully, but the blender is going to kind of take care of the rest of all of this. So you could use any frozen fruit, a similar amount. You could use any juice, any flavor here. I happen to like banana orange creamsicle, but you could go crazy. You could add a spoonful of peanut butter, and you could add chocolate chips when this is all done. All right, that is pretty much good. Real quick, loud sounds. Mute me if you want to, real quick. Okay. There we go. So, oh, it smells delicious. Love that. So now, this mold, I don't know, I really like this silicone one. It's really nice. We're gonna pour in, not all the way. I'm stopping a little bit above because it's gonna expand. And we're just gonna go like that. Now, if you want to get crazy, and I always want to get crazy, we can add some stuff. So you could add little slices of banana. So if you do that, you got to make sure you don't fill it quite as full. But I kind of underfill this one. I've got some Oreo crumbles. This would be more of a dessert one. I'm going to add Oreo in there. Oh my gosh. You could add chocolate chips or little M&Ms. Now these might sink to the bottom, which is great, so you get a really good first bite. You can experiment, if you want to do a science experiment, you could experiment with using less liquid and see if you can get the little chocolate chips or M&Ms to not fall all the way to the bottom. That would be pretty impressive if you could come up with a super, if you did something that was closer to just yogurt, you might be able to get them to stick, and then you might be able to swirl them all the way through. But there's no wrong way to do this. This is all about your imagination. So, we put our little top on. What I love about this is this, you just stick it right in, make sure it's in all the way, and you're good to go. And I'm putting that in the freezer, and it should take about 3 to 4 hours. Larger molds will take longer, smaller molds will take less time. But that is the banana orange creamsicle popsicle, ready to go. You know, we'll put it over here because I need to finish that when we're all done. Okay, so that concludes our little crazy cooking lesson. I hope you had fun. Let's see if I can get this one out so I can enjoy it. It's still stuck in there, so we got to run water. Helper, will you run some warm water over this? Thank you. Awesome. Yep, we need to run warm water over both of these. Now, why does that work? It's because we're melting the outside of this and just a little bit, and that helps it slide out. Okay. Woohoo! Look at that. I think that this cup kind of mold would be awesome to make a rocket popsicle, which would be the cherry and lemon, red, white, and blue ones that are popular. You could buy. Look at that star. That's really good. It has a nice creaminess, nice tangy from the yogurt. That's delicious. Okay, people, if you have questions, concerns, ideas.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've got about 10 minutes that we could take any questions that people might have. Feel free to add it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Yeah, we did have one earlier where with the when we were talking about other fruit for the chicken and apple bites.
Yeah.
If someone is allergic to apple or pear, could you do it without, or do you think there could be a different fruit in there for someone who couldn't have apple or pear in their bites?
Interesting question. I think if you did a little bit of grated onion, that might sort of give that moisture. That the original recipe this is based on actually called for onion, but I find some kids don't like that stronger flavor. You can do it without. You're just going to have a bit of a firmer textured meatball. If you can eat pineapple, you might be able to do maybe a 1/4 cup of crushed pineapple could be fun. Sometimes cooking pineapple with things though you don't want to let that sit a long time. Pineapple has enzymes, which are chemicals that can break down stuff in meat. So if you're going to do like that, I would do it right away. But I would say a little bit, like a 1/4 cup of grated or finely chopped onion would probably give you some moisture, and you're just going to expect a slightly firmer meatball. I've realized a scientific fact with this Yoplait cup. This cup has a little bit of a taper to it, so I don't actually think this one makes a great. Oops! Oh gosh, going everywhere. You might want to choose a different kind of cup that doesn't have that little bit of a taper at the edge, because it's wider at the bottom than it is at the top, so that's why it's getting stuck. So that's going to be a problem for another moment. Okay. Other questions? Is everyone, as they put everybody to sleep?
It was a lot of fun.
Awesome, awesome. So none of the kids have any questions.
Yeah.
Everyone's hungry for dinner.
Can you make popsicles with like coconut milk or coconut water?
Oh yeah. So coconut water is very different than coconut milk. Coconut milk has a lot of fat in it. Coconut water doesn't. So you're going to get a much icier popsicle if you use just coconut water. If you use coconut milk, you want to make sure you mix. You know, sometimes you open the can, there's fat at the top and liquid at the bottom. You got to mix it all up with a whisk and a bowl just to make sure it's all incorporated. And then you can absolutely do a dairy-free popsicle. I would probably just mix pineapple juice and coconut milk together and do a really good popsicle just like that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anybody else? Questions, concerns, ideas? I love ideas. Kids have the best ideas because they have fresh brains and they think of new things.
Has anybody done any cooking experiments while home?
I love hearing about cooking experiments.
Anybody tried any new recipes or tried a new food that they'd never had before?
Oh yeah.
We made quail.
Ooh.
Yeah.
How was that? Were they like tiny chickens?
Yeah. We had, yeah, they were like really small. It was interesting flavor. We have to look up some.
Chicken?
Are they stronger? Yeah, you know, we had a pretty strong marinade on it, so it was hard to say, but it was like similar to chicken. It was like a mix between chicken and turkey. It was kind of strange.
And how did you cook it? Did you grill it or bake it?
We fried it in a pan. We like cut them in halves because they're so small. My husband cooked them, and I don't remember what I think he used like a honey soy marinade maybe
Oh,
with
that sounds
ginger.
great.
Yeah. So that was fun.
I love trying new things. I think that's what makes food interesting is there's always something I've never had before, something I never tried. I always am looking up new things to try. It makes it exciting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Caroline, did you have a question? Do you want to unmute yourself? It looks like you might have raised your hand. Mhm.
I learned how to make mashed potatoes.
Oh yeah. So
Did you mash them yourself?
Yes.
awesome. So the good thing is there's a million different ways to make mashed potatoes. And when I send out the recipe tomorrow, I'll give all the specific instructions. But what's great about a potato is it's pretty flexible. You can boil them and then peel them. You can poke them with holes and put them in the microwave. That will cook them too. You can bake them in the oven. So there's lots of different ways to make potatoes. I really love a mashed potato. I think they're so, so good. And does anyone here like different kinds of potatoes? I usually would use a russet, those brown potatoes, but I also like red potatoes, purple potatoes. I like sweet potatoes, which are not technically a potato, they're a yam, but I will make sure that you have a good recipe for mashed potatoes that you can do any way you want because they're delicious.
Thank you, everybody. If you think of any other questions, feel free to email me. And then as Meryl has said, she has some recipes written up and I will be sharing that out as soon as they are ready. And we have this recording that'll be up on our YouTube channel as soon as we get a chance to kind of get that up. Thank you all for coming. Again, thank you to the Friends of the Belmont Public Library for supporting our program. And thank you to our instructor, Meryl, for walking us through that and showing us some delicious foods. And now, Meryl, you're making us so jealous that you get to enjoy all of the food that you've had. And
Yeah,
we only get to watch it.
I'm going to finish cooking my chicken and apple balls, and then I'm going to have so much fun. But if anybody wants to learn more about cooking, this is kind of a new thing I've been doing videos. I'd be happy to do one-on-one or one-on-twos with people, so feel free to reach out to me. If you have any questions about anything we've done today or cooking questions in general, I'll be more than happy to answer those questions for you. I hope you keep cooking, stay safe, have fun, and enjoy eating great food with your family.
Thank you.
Okay.